Hi.
Hi, Shirley.
How are you? Trying to get this background out of here.
You look like you're in a spot where I wouldn't be.
Yeah. Try not to. How do I move this off here? Yeah. Let's see.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're going to give people a few more minutes to join before we get started, so just hang tight.
Surely I want to be where you are.
And I'm trying to figure out how to move it.
No, I like it.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, it is a good place to be. I'm not.
Better than the cold, wet rain we have here in Vermont.
Yeah, well, not much different in Pittsfield right now.
Yeah,
That's my reality. My dream is behind me.
that's a good dream.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sorry.
Hi, everybody. If you're here from Protest to Power, Part 1, you're in the right place. We're giving everyone just one more minute to join before we get started. Just hang tight.
Hi, Samantha. Just wanted to let you know that I was here. I found a way to get in. There was something disabled with the link, but I'm here now. And I sent you an email. You could disregard it. Like stressing out, oh my God, I can't get in. But,
No, well, we're so happy you're here and we're happy you made it.
and you know I have a very hard stop, right?
Yes, so we will get started as soon as we get our intern to share our screen. We can get going. I can start with our remarks now while we're getting that set up. So hi, everybody. Welcome to part 1 of From Protest to Power, where tonight together we'll learn how extraordinary women around Massachusetts are tackling anti-racism in their communities. My name is Samantha Kelly, and I'm the treasurer and executive committee member of the Massachusetts Women's Political Caucus Political Action Committee, affectionately known among us as the MWPC PAC. And I'm joined tonight by Caitlin Clark and Amy Diamond, who are co-chairs. Caitlin and Amy, please give a wave. I want to thank them and the MWPC PAC interns who have been working so hard on this event tonight. And I'd like to give a thank you to all of you for being here, especially in these unparalleled times. Our country is at a crucial inflection point, brought on by the pandemic, the election, and really what led you all here tonight, a fervent commitment to social justice. A bit of background about us: the MWPC PAC is a nonpartisan organization that recruits, trains, and seeks to elect qualified women to public office in order to achieve political parity. Our goal is to offer programs to increase the interest of women of all ages in the political process and help them to be successful in the political arena. This year, the MWPC PAC endorsed 49 candidates. our highest ever, 22 of whom were new endorsements, and 37 of whom are going on to their general election on November 3rd. 100% of the proceeds of this fundraiser are going directly to those candidates. And we're so grateful for your donations. And if you're able, please consider donating again, ask others to donate. And if you're watching the recording of this event and you find our mission and these women inspiring like we do, please donate. We need you. Speaking of incredible candidates on the ballot this year, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that we will hopefully have the first African American and the first South Asian American female vice president, which has made the work of the MWCP PAC more crucial now than it has ever been. And this year, we've seen a massive mobilization of Americans from all walks of life, protesting against police killings, and more generally, advocating for anti-racism. And tonight, we will hear from 3 extraordinary women who are all local activists. Each speaker will speak for about 10 to 15 minutes, followed by an opportunity for guests to ask questions at the end. Thank you to those who submitted questions through our Google form. And if you have any new questions for our speakers, please feel free to ask them in the Zoom chat box at the end of the presentations, and we will try to get through as many as we can. Just a few housekeeping items. You may notice that you have all been muted, and this is so we can minimize background noise and keep the focus on our speakers. Tonight's event is also being recorded, so we can post it on our website for anyone who wasn't able to attend, or if you want to watch it again for tips from our speakers. And again, thank you all who took the time to come to this event tonight as we do a deep dive into discussing about advocating for social justice. Now, I will briefly introduce each of the panelists in turn immediately before they give their 10 to 15-minute remarks. And more detailed bios can be found in the program and on our website. But first, really quick, let's try something together. Some virtual applause. If you could, everyone unmute for just one moment, and please give a round of welcoming applause for our speakers. Great, thank you so much. Without further ado, our first speaker is Boston City Councilor, Julia Mejia. Julia, after a historic recount, Councilor Mejia won her seat by 1 single vote. Now she is the first Afro-Latina to sit on the Boston City Council. Councilor Mejia is currently the chair of the Committee on Civil Rights and the Committee of Small Business and Workforce Development. She is focused on influencing and inspiring constituents to be actively engaged in all areas of the decision-making process. Since assuming her role in January, Councilor Mejia has created a series of innovative COVID-related projects in response to the needs of Boston's hardest hit constituents. She has created culturally responsive food access projects designed to support small businesses and feed our most vulnerable, and a COVID business readiness to build capacity for Black and Brown immigrant-owned barbers and hair salons, designed and implemented a community-centered civic engagement model to address citywide quality of life concerns, and filed legislation to improve access and accountability in city government, utilizing multimedia tools to inform and educate. Councilor Mejia was also recently named Best City Politician 2020 in Boston Magazine. Councilor Mejia, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. And more importantly, thank you for your endorsement. I am one of the recipients of that endorsement when I ran for office a year or 2 ago. So just, wow, I want us just to turn off all of this extracurricular activity that's happening in the background here. But just wanted to thank you for your support and for believing in me when I sometimes forgot to believe in myself. So I think that the work that you do is crucially important, and I'm happy to be here to share a little bit about protest to power. I think that even just winning by 1 vote, it's important for us to also acknowledge that we were able to do that without sending out 1 citywide mailer. So a lot of our work focused on grassroots organizing, and we were in barbershops, hair salons. We were where the people were at, literally, to engage them in the electoral process. Because for us, whether we won or not, we were really focused on increasing the level of civic engagement. And it's that same level of enthusiasm that we brought into the council, and we haven't even gotten comfortable in our seats, and COVID came, and so here we are. But it presented itself as an opportunity for us to really be innovative about the issues that we are struggling with. So I believe someone is helping me with my screens, or do I do it oh, there we go. So I just want you to know, aside from being the one vote wonder, I'm also the infamous counselor who took care of the fireworks situation that was happening in Boston. And so by a show of hands, I'm not sure if anyone fell victim to the fireworks situation outside of Boston, because I know it was happening all across the state. So if you were feeling that pain, I am the person that you can thank for reducing the level of activity that was happening out in these streets as it relates to fireworks. What we noticed is that during COVID, because a lot of folks were cooped up literally, what we started to see was a way that people were dealing with some of the anxiety and some of the trauma and just some of the release. And what we noticed is that there were over 5,543, it increased a percentage of the number of complaints that the city was getting as a result of fireworks, 5,543%. So what was going on? Nightly incidents of illegal fireworks were being set off at night into the early morning. People were losing sleep. And as you know, sleep deprivation also really impacts your social and emotional well-being. The fireworks were traumatizing a lot of people, specifically folks who were already experiencing trauma, folks who were had lost loved ones due to gun violence. And what we realized is that at the height of all of this, this is right around the time when George Floyd happened around the country. And so there was a lot of angst in communities, particularly across the city of Boston. People were really afraid about how to handle this situation in a way that was going to be culturally responsive. And even though the fireworks were loud and annoying and disruptive, what we heard from a lot of our constituents is that they wanted to address this issue from a place of a community-centered approach, and how we could deal with this instead of calling the police. What other things can we do? And so from looking at Facebook posts and emails, what we decided to do is host a town hall. And you think, oh, what's the big deal about a town hall? But let me just tell you, close to over 500 people showed up to talk about this issue. And what was so incredible about this particular town hall is that we were really intentional about not just inviting people who all agreed with each other. We created space for folks who really wanted to call the police and shut it down, and folks who wanted to find an alternative ways to deal with this situation. And what we found is that when you bring people together from opposing views, you might find some common ground. And that oftentimes when we're organizing, we're always usually organizing with people who agree with us. And that is easy. What's the hardest thing to do is to bring people together across differences. And that town hall really created the space for us to be able to do that. In that town hall, where we discovered where we identified, you can go on to the next slide. What we discovered was that there were a number of different activities that came from the community directly. Some folks wanted to do community-led campaigns. There was also some conversations around like this one-on-one, how do you talk to your neighbor? For those folks who you probably know your neighbor, but in certain neighborhoods, especially like Boston, it's really transient and people aren't able to develop relationships. And so through this particular situation, we were able to really create a platform for folks to get to know their neighbors, right? To have dialogue, to come together as a street and identify how are we going to solve this issue? How are we going to organize collectively? So that was one of the things that we were able to see as a result of the organizing that we did online. The other piece of that we were able to do is create an opportunity for the administration to get involved. And when we talk about the administration, is City Hall and the mayor. So we designed in collaboration with the mayor's office an entire task force. And it was composed of community residents who were living the realities and people from diverse perspectives and backgrounds to create a multimedia campaign, which was designed by the people who were living the realities. We created PSAs, brochures, we created a whole social media campaign. And as something as simple as the fireworks, it was really about centering the conversation and ensuring that those who are living the realities were informing what it is that we should be doing. And that task force, I'm happy to say that as a result of that, we were able to create dialogue on our social media platform. We had people who wrote in and shared their best solutions. We utilized people's voices and their stories to inspire others. So it was really led for the people and by the people. And it was just an incredible thing to see manifest, because what was really, for me as a citywide counselor, I'm responsible for 22 neighborhoods. And every neighborhood is like a different personality, right? Everybody has a different issue and everybody has something else that they really care about. And so to bring people across the entire city around an issue that was impacting us all, and to be able to create space for diverse perspectives, we really felt like the model that we were creating was really a great way for us to continue to build and organize around other quality of life issues. You can go on to the next screen, unless that was it. Is there one more? So I think I got a little bit ahead of myself. I already talked about the community conversations. The concluding lessons is obviously, lead with the community. I always say that nothing about us without us is for us. And I'll say that one more time in case you want to write that down. Nothing about us without us is for us. And if we're not at the table, we're on the menu, and every day we're being eaten up alive. So leading with people who are living the realities is what this work is all about. We were able to create trauma-informed practices, leading with empathy, and really helping people understand the mindset. And like our counselor, as our Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley says, is that those who are closest to the pain should be closest to the power. And that's what this work is all about, is creating space for those to lead. So I will, unless I think there's one more slide. That was it. So we're utilizing this model now, and we are partnering up with BU. They're interested in following our community-centered approach to civic engagement, and they're going to be doing a research study. And now we're taking this same model and we're applying it to the COVID reopening conversation around the Boston Public Schools reopening plan, because there's a lot of back and forth. And so yesterday we hosted a town hall, and now we're going to be setting up a series of community conversations to tackle that issue as well. So which school at BU? Of course, Abby, you're going to ask me. I got to look to see. Courtney, I think if you're on the line with us, you could tell us where Jacob, Professor Bohr, what school he's with. I think, I don't know what school he's with, but I know it's at BU. We can find out. Courtney, if you could find, I think Courtney from my team is on. Courtney, if you could find out, and then we can share while I'm still here.
Yes, he's with the School of Global Health.
Thank you for that, Courtney. Oh wait, are there other questions in the chat? Oh no, just Abby. So I'll open it up for questions now.
Anyone has any questions for Councilor Mejia, please feel free to type it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself here.
Oh, hey, Pamela. It's so good to see you. I use my time other ways. Y'all don't have to have questions. I can keep talking about other things that I care about. I have no problem doing that. Okay, Councilor Kristen.
Thank you, because I could type it out, but my brain and my mouth is faster than my fingers, so I might as well just ask you in person. Counselor, what is one of the greatest challenges you're facing in your first term?
Yeah, for those folks who may not know my journey, like I didn't grow up in a life of politics. And I think I didn't come to play politics either. And I think one of the things that I'm learning how to do is how to navigate a system that was really designed to not move things forward, right? And so that level of frustration of having a conversation about the conversation about the conversation that we had like 30 years ago, it just keeps being dressed up in a different outfit, is frustrating. That has been a rude awakening, because I came in thinking I was gonna do it all. And I realized that I didn't even know half of what my job description was. And I've been making it up as I go. And that, I feel, has been the most, I think, rewarding, because I've been able to define for myself what type of leader I want to be and how I want to show up. But what I find to be most frustrating is just the amount of politics that get played with people's lives. Yeah.
And Councillor Mejia, we had one more question that was submitted by Google Form earlier today. How has the task force been perceived by the public, and have you seen a positive change in the relationship between the community and government?
Yeah, so I would have to say is that the task force, actually, as a result of it, there's been several Facebook groups that have actually started to continue the conversation around other things that people can do. So what I think that really goes to show that the task force was well received, and the work that we did was able to continue to move on. So much so that we're utilizing this model now with other quality of life issues. And the same folks that participated in our fireworks conversation are now continuing to engage with us on this other issue. And I think that always is the best way of demonstrating what is working, when folks who were never engaged now are continuing to follow your work and being a voice and a leader in different spaces. So I think it's been well received. And the important part of the work is that it didn't end with just a meeting, that the task force actually produced results and materials to work. And I fixed, I can't say that I fixed the fireworks, but I'm gonna claim that as one of my victory speeches when I'm out there politicking again, that as a result of what we did, we fixed the fireworks problem. So I think that it goes to show what is possible when you get out the way and create space for other folks to lead. And that is, the people really do have so much more power than we've been led to believe. And I believe Courtney just chatted me and said that after this, I'm gonna have to go. Unless anyone else has any other questions for me.
There's a bunch of questions in the chat box,
Okay.
Julia.
Okay.
I also want to be sensitive to our other speakers. So maybe Councillor Mejia, if you could maybe answer one more.
Yep.
I think that would be great.
Okay. Okay, what solutions is this? Okay, there's a lot of questions. I'm trying to think of what bringing people different. Okay, so I'm going to answer the question about with bringing people with different views on the fireworks issue. How did you allow the conversation to take place in a constructive manner and everyone felt heard? What we did is we, after we hosted the huge town hall, we took the best, the brightest solutions that people kind of all felt like they can live with. And then we hosted a series of regional community conversations, because what works for Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan may be very different than what works for West Roxbury, Rosingdale, and Jamaica Plain. So what we did from there is we created regional community conversations, and we were able to then further unpack some of the things that we heard to see whether or not those things will work in their specific neighborhoods, and then created a space for folks to then think about those things may not fit here, but what could? And I think that that tension of like calling the police, not calling the police, showed up no matter what part of the neighborhood you happen to live in. And so dealing with that was really more about presenting people with viable alternatives. And I think that coaching people through calling 311 or knocking on your neighbor's door or utilizing one of those videos to share were really great tools to be able to have in our disposal to engage and inspire folks who are dealing with that tension. Yes.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you
thank you
so much.
again. I love you all. Anytime you need me, you know, I always show up. And Pamela, it's good to see you. It's good to see all of y'all. Thank you so much. And I'm sorry I have to do a Zoom bye, but I got to go somewhere else now.
Thank you for all of your time, Councilor Mejia.
Bye.
We appreciate you.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, our next speaker is Ms. Shirley Edgerton. She is the founder of the Women of Color Giving Circle and the NAACP Berkshire's board member. And Shirley was raised in Mount Vernon, New York, and graduated from Herbert Lehman College and Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts. Shirley became involved in community work, trying to introduce her children to use these activities. She founded the Women of Color Giving Circle, the Rites of Passage and Empowerment Program, and Youth Alive, all of which target youth and young people, instilling in them leadership and team building skills that will make them successful later in life. These organizations and programs have allowed her to pass on the knowledge and the skills she learned from her own female role models. She truly exemplifies the importance of community and youth engagement and has a wealth of experience that makes her uniquely qualified to speak about this work. Thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Edgerton. The floor is yours.
Okay. Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I am going to talk about the young women that I have the pleasure and the honor to work with. So the Rites of Passage and Empowerment Program for girls, it's a mentoring program. It's 10 years old. There are 12 young women of color. I'm sorry, 12, 20 young women of color that we mentor on an individual and a group level. Out of 20, 10 of those young women graduated from high school in May, and all 10 are currently in college. So we're pretty proud of the statistics. But one of the things that we have found, which is a universal problem for women of color, is the intersection of the issue of race and gender. So often the young women that we work with, they feel invisible, though they are brilliant, though they come to the table with all types of skills and abilities and the possibilities of just greatness in their lives as women, they often feel invisible. I mean, if we look at the, even in social justice, with all of the conversations and the issues that have taken place this past summer, Breonna Taylor, you know, we often don't hear as much about the Black women who have been where violence has been an issue, police brutality. We often hear more so about the about Black men. So there is that issue, that intersection of racism and sexism for as a major issue for the young women that we work with. And all of the mentors intentionally are professional women of color. And that's because often these young women don't get an opportunity to engage with other professional women of color. If you look at our school system, there's the diversity, the racial diversity is about 3 to 4% in terms of the educators. So we try to provide an opportunity for them to engage with professional women. We also understand that we need to teach them to, in terms of the independence that we're trying to teach them, that we need to engage them in protests and standing for themselves. So as part of the NAACP, 2 of the young women that I've worked with started a youth committee in the NAACP. They have worked this, like this past summer, they participated in organizing the protests that you just saw pictured just right here, okay? This occurred in Pittsfield, and they engaged their peers, their siblings, and it was an opportunity for education and to teach them about the value of protest and how they can, ways that they can make change. The next slide, you can see some of our young women, again, who are involved in voting, involved in educating themselves and the community, even though some of them, obviously, as you can see, are too young to vote, but it starts, the earlier you start, you plant the seed, it will grow and stay with them. So we ensure that voting and voter education and registration is a regular part of their experience, and to help them to understand that policy is a way of making changes. So to eradicate the fact that they feel invisible, to ensure that there's policy that's reflective of the needs of their communities. You can, okay. And also, as part of the educational experience, we partner, collaborate with Pittsfield Public School Systems, college and universities. Like this was an opportunity that we organized with the Rites of Passage and Empowerment members and other school systems in Berkshire County. And it was an opportunity for young people to learn about African American history as well as Holocaust. We visited the Holocaust Museum. So that was an opportunity for them to become much broader and inclusive in thought, because we also ensure that there's some conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So as mentors, we also take the opportunity to educate ourselves and also to ensure that there's a bond and a sense of sisterhood. So here's a picture of some of the mentors and some of our collaborators in the community who help support the young women that we work with. And this was an opportunity to see Just Mercy. So to dig a little deeper, this group, not only when we talk about mentoring, is the individual as well as the group, which we talked about. And as it was said already, it is so important that we have conversations with those who we that we're supporting. So we often have conversations with the young people and get their input, get a direction from them as to what we can do or what they think they can do to make societal changes, to work towards racial justice, to work towards social justice. So living in a time of COVID, they led us to have numerous conversations through Zoom. And these young people and created these discussion groups. Some of them were designed for youth only, and adults could be invited, but they had to be completely silent, which was an interesting process to watch and to hear. And the conversation was often rich, and the young people were very engaged with each other in just processing things that happen in our world, processing, as you can see, some of the topics, the issue around Black transgender women, protecting Black women and more. They had a leader from the Black Lives Movement on another Zoom conversation and had a very engaging conversation about the meaning of the Black Lives Movement, the impact, the future of the Black Lives Movement, and how they could represent or be a part of the movement in the future. And one of the other aspects that we advocate is that intergenerational work, where it's not, there's not a separate movement of young people and more seasoned adults, but that we work together in kind of an intergenerational, where those of us who were around for the March on Washington, the Civil Rights Movement in the 60s, that the lessons that we've learned, that we can share those lessons with our young women, and those young women can build and create for the future to make differences in the world that we're currently living in. And obviously, as we know, we're repeating some of the same issues that we've been addressing for generations. So it is it's an opportunity for young people to come up with new strategies, and we encourage that. And we try to provide that opportunity to have those community conversations. We've been having a series of conversations with city officials about how young people can strategize and make recommendations for policy changes. And we want to try to, we try to encourage our young women to consider running for office. And there are those who, you know, who will choose to be, and as they are now, activists, community activists, because the force from inside the systems as well as the outside is needed to create change. So we actively provide the learning opportunities for them to come out of this feeling of being invisible and somehow feeling like they aren't being heard, and provide an opportunity for them to make change and differences in our community. On October the 30th, we have an event coming up where 3 of our young people who are currently attending Howard University were able to attend the March on Washington that occurred in March. So they will have a conversation, and it will be an opportunity for those who have some history or understanding of what happened at the March on Washington in the 60s to talk about to compare what happened then and where we are now, and why we aren't further on the journey to equity and justice. So that's pretty much our problem, our young women feeling invisible, dealing with intersectionality of racism and sexism, and how we have made some efforts to empower them to make changes for a better society.
Wow, thank you so much. Are there any questions from our guests for Shirley? One question to kick it off, Shirley.
Okay.
Have you seen a change in the movement for racial justice and equity with more youth activism, the kind of activism you're talking about? You know, has the face of it changed?
Yeah, I think that more attention is being paid. I think that because of technology, because things are so much in people's face, that there's a portion of our society that really did not know that these things were happening. You know, because often, if you think about it, our history isn't exactly accurate, you know, in terms of in our educational system. So if you're not in any type of situation or an environment where you are living the experience, like many of us who look like me, or you are in some type of setting where there's conversation, then you often don't have that opportunity to engage in these conversations and to understand what the issues are around diversity, equity, and inclusion in our country.
And it looks like we have some questions in the chat. So Karen Zink is asking, have any of the graduates of the ROPE program considered running for office at the local level?
Yes, trust me, we are having conversations. We absolutely are having conversations because there are so many brilliant young women that are, we call them alums. Once they have graduated from high school, they've entered college or either have graduated. And we actually have a young woman that's working with with Senator Warren. And we have others that are in other key positions. Like we have a young woman that's working with Brian Stevenson right now. So we maintain contact. We have these young women to come back and provide support and information to the current young women that are in the group. And yes, we are having lots of conversations about them running for office.
Great, oh my gosh. And Councillor Kristen Strezzo has a question.
Thank you. And thank you, Shirley, for all your work. It's incredible.
Thank
How
you.
has the local delegation, state delegation responded to the young women? Have they been supportive, or what has been your experiences? What have been your experiences in that?
Our delegation is extremely supportive. They have shown up, particularly, Jesus, I'm having a name problem here, but particularly the women have been very responsive, showing up, sharing with the young women, having conversations, inviting them to events, and as well as financially supporting the organizations, because we do college tours locally. We attend historical Black college and universities throughout the South. We travel throughout the South with the young people. And we also do, every 2 years, we do international service learning. And so we usually travel to South or West Africa. And our delegation has been extremely supportive. Trisha, Farley Bouvier. Yes, had a moment there. Yes, very, very supportive.
I think we have time for one more question before we move on to our last speaker. Any other questions for Shirley?
Can I jump in? This is Helen Moon.
Yes, another supporter.
Well, I just want to say I am so impressed with all three of the ladies on. Two of them are my Emerge sisters, and I have the great honor and privilege of considering Shirley Edgerton one of my friends. I am just wondering, so I know how amazing ROPE is and the Women of Color Giving Circle. I'm wondering if there is capacity, just kind of going off of what Rep. Farley Bouvier is saying, and there was another question about, from Karen Zink, about local running for office. Do you think that your programs would have capacity to maybe have a political mentorship, so that you could pair local or state, regional elected officials with the young women, so you can get a better sense of what running for office or what being an elected official is like. And also if there is capacity for perhaps joining with other agencies in training for running for office, because we know that women typically fundraise less than men, and women of color especially fundraise less than men. And so we have to kind of expand those networks and give those opportunities and give the tools necessary to be successful in running for office.
Well, I think there is. I mean, right now we have, our monthly meetings, and we've had some of the women, including the mayor, to come in and have conversations. But I do think it would be worth a conversation to figure out a way how we could create some additional structure. The biggest issue would be being that our alums, once they graduate from college, we have some that return back to the Berkshires, but we have others who are throughout the United States. So we would have to do that dance, would probably just focus more on the young people that return to the Berkshires, and the ones that are currently in the group to mentor them around their political future. We could definitely talk.
Thank you so much, Shirley.
Okay.
Great questions, everybody.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for your work. And last and certainly not least, so we have our final speaker, Dimple Rana, who is the Director of Healthy Community Initiatives for the City of Revere. Dimple is the first generation Indian American who grew up in Revere, Massachusetts. Her experiences early on helping out at her family's store, attending public school, and working as a peer leader allowed her to learn about the unique challenges faced by small business owners, and especially first-generation immigrants. After graduating from Hofstra, Dimple began community organizing in the greater Boston area, specifically advocating for the rights of the LGBTQ+ community and immigrants. She helped found Revere Youth in Action in 2012, building upon her earlier work. She also advocated for the rise of the living wage through her work with the Raise Up Massachusetts Coalition. Throughout her life and career, Dimple has experienced firsthand the issues faced in her community and engaged through her community activism to make a real difference. For these reasons, she is uniquely qualified to speak about how to transform community engagement, activism, and advocacy into legislation and real change. And with that, Dimple, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sam. It's hard to follow Councilor Mejia and Shirley with my presentation. I also just want to give a shout out to all the Emerge sisters that are on tonight. So happy to see you. So as Sam mentioned with my biography, I do wear many hats here in the city of Revere as a lifelong resident and organizer. And it was really hard for me to find one issue for this presentation. Revere is a very diverse city. We are 40% foreign born, but you wouldn't know it by looking at our elected leadership or those in other positions of power. I was the first woman of color to run for city council in 2017 and again last year in 2019. And then also one of the first people of color to work here at City Hall in 2012, and currently the only department head of color. I have experienced a lot and have become the go-to for people in power to blame and expose their white fragility as the power of the One Revere movement continues to build. And as Sam mentioned, I have many years of organizing and advocacy experience. So it's again hard for me to find a topic to share with you, but tonight a topic that I'm really passionate about is about food and also justice, food justice. So people of color, I might be preaching to the choir, but people of color are the most severely impacted by hunger, poor food access, diet-related illness, and other problems with the food system. The food justice movement works not only for access to healthy food for all, but also examines the structural roots of these disparities and works for racial and economic justice too. This work isn't new, and what gets lost in the predominant narrative about urban white foodies obsessing over the latest food trend and statistics on poor health outcomes for minority groups is that people of color have been bringing historical injustices in the food system to light and have been working toward empowering alternatives. So this is a really great quote from Raj Patel that is on the presentation. I'm gonna move on to the next slide though. And this is a slide about the food justice movement. The dominant food system with its cheap, empty calories and ubiquitous fast food joints leaves many Americans undernourished and unhealthy, and the brunt of those results are borne by low-income communities of color. As we've seen with COVID, health disparities have been exacerbated, and we are the ones who are being most impacted, especially because we have diseases that we carry, such as heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and stroke are the most common causes of illness, disability, and death in the US. And what the factors that lead to these chronic conditions include lack of access to healthy food, and this is common for people of color and minority groups. So food insecurity and high rates of diet-related disease correlate with poverty, which again, disproportionately impacts people of color, and this is no coincidence. It's a long legacy of discriminatory and inequitable policies that have left historically oppressed peoples to start off with less wealth, property, and opportunity than white people. In addition to the racialized roots of poverty, the food system itself is built on centuries of exploitation of people of color, especially Black people. The roots of today's hunger and health inequities run deep, yet there are movements that have led to policy changes, such as in the 1960s, the Black Panther Party, who fought for the Black self-determination, where they established more than 60 survival programs to meet community needs. One of these was a breakfast program that distributed free breakfast to 20,000 children in 19 cities and is credited with jumpstarting the National School Breakfast Program. Around the same time, the United Farm Workers, founded by Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, united Filipino and Mexican workers in a movement that won rights for tens of thousands of farm workers and paved the way for legislation guaranteeing basic worker rights to agricultural workers. So on the next slide, this is some information about a newer urban planning movement called Equitable Food-Oriented Development. And this is some of the work that we have been working towards in Revere. I'm also gonna just share a quick link and then you can also take a look after. So I'm gonna use EFOD, or I'm gonna take off the E and just call it FOD, just so that we can get through the presentation. FOD has a potential to create jobs, support local businesses, and generate revenue, and can also have the positive impacts on health and social inequities. And then when done through the equity lens, FOD has the potential to generate a host of benefits for low-income and marginalized communities, including job opportunities and economic development, unique cultural expression, and an explicit health promotion lens. So in the chart here, I know it's a little hard to read, but the different categories include, categories of criteria include equity and justice first, that the FOD is place-based, it uses market-based strategies, there's community leadership and development, including community organizing and community ownership. So the FOD can be imagined in many ways. It could be a development of a food hub, hydroponics or rooftop farms, or food halls, food trucks. These types of spaces can allow for the production of fresh local produce to be sold at local farmers markets, used in local restaurants, and also locally consumed by residents. This has dual benefits by circulating local dollars and increasing the consumption of healthy food. And additionally, these spaces have the potential to help small food businesses grow in the case of providing shared kitchen space and brick and mortar opportunities. So I'm gonna go to the next slide, and just as a quick placeholder, just to share some examples, local examples of FOD in the form of food halls and shared facility spaces that can be seen in the Boston area. So for example, with the Boston Public Market and in the somewhat recently opened Bow Market in Somerville, which houses various food stalls as well as local artisans and other vendors, and also helps promote small local businesses and provide a space for the community to gather. At Bow Market, small local vendors have been able to rent and share brick and mortar space and other small businesses, making it less costly in obtaining their standalone business or storefront. So on the next slide is a snapshot of the Revere Farmers Market, which my department took over in 2015, and we have been leading it since. In 2015, when we took it over, we we had the urgency to find staffing. I was able to recruit a Boston University public health student who helped to get us up and going, but the majority of our staff who have continued to lead the farmers market are youth of color here in Revere. In 2018, one of our youth staff who had been working in the program as a youth leader for the past 2 years, while a junior at Revere High, she became the market manager as a junior. And so she has continued to return since then. And currently she has just wrapped up her first year of college and running the 2020 season. WIC redemption, we are 6th in the state for WIC voucher redemption, which is really, really amazing to us. We are really proud of being 6th in the state for these federal farmers market nutrition vouchers being redeemed at the Revere Farmers Market. Prior to us taking it over, there was a color-coded coupon system, which was very visible, and people were able to tell what type of government assistance you are based on the color of the coupon. And so when we took it over and we learned that this was not a system that we wanted to keep using, because we had to put up signs in 2015 to tell consumers to be nice to each other because of the type of conversations and the stares and the finger pointing that was happening to customers on government assistance. So we created a local shopping cart to reduce the stigma of using government benefits, and it looks like a regular gift card. And we have been using CDBG, Community Development Block Grant entitlement funds to increase the purchasing power for low and moderate income residents to be able to shop at the farmers market. We know it's not cheap, but we also know that that farmers markets bring to us local farm fresh food that is much more nutritious than buying food that's shipped from thousands of miles away in our supermarkets. Funding for this match program has always been difficult, but by identifying the city resource, CDBG funding that hadn't been utilized in the correct way, we have been able to continue to use it year after year, including this year where we've seen the highest redemption rates that we have ever seen since we started running the farmers market.
Where is it?
So then we have HIP and the HIP program, which is related to SNAP, Healthy Incentives Program, and then the WIC and Senior FMNP vouchers. I know I'm using a lot of acronyms, but the HIP, Healthy Incentives Program, is a statewide program and a huge, huge policy endeavor to, again, to help SNAP users to be able to access fresh local food. So you can only use your HIP benefits with your SNAP card at farmers markets, farm stands, and at CSAs. And we promote the heck out of it because it really promotes healthy, nutritious food for a population that isn't used to being able to buy it. And, you know, really for us, it's a point of yearly advocacy that we do. You know, we happen to be in Speaker DeLeo's district, and he has been a supporter of the HIP policy and has come to visit the farmers market several times. And we continuously to push him and other of our state legislators to really continue to fund HIP, because it's been, again, something of a stigma where low-income people don't deserve or don't eat healthy food. And so this is something else that we try very hard to push. And then we have the market stands, some of them who have turned into brick and mortar. So for example, one of our bakery stands that is a Revere resident. She is now at the Boston Public Market and also opening at the Worcester Public Market, Jennifer Lee's Gourmet Bakery. She has she started off a small little shop at the Boston Public Market and now to a larger corner area. But Jen has been one of our success stories where we've helped to cultivate small business owners, small food business owners into brick and mortar. And that was also support that we have given to the Mass Food Trust Program, which is again another state policy and also a resource to help support local businesses, especially around food. And then establishing market rules. We didn't think that establishing market rules would be such a divisive issue, but this is something that we have been really proud to, because it's really an obvious system change that needed to happen. I'll tell you a quick story. A white vendor assumed that one of our POC vendors was not following the rules, so they decided not to follow any rules. The system had worked so much in their favor that what they didn't realize was that POC business was following all the rules, and the white vendor just assumed that they weren't because the other business was doing better in a system that traditionally only worked well for white business owners who were able to get away with not following the rules because of who they knew in positions of power. And so this was a real big systems change for us. We even, this vendor brought it to the attention of the city council. We were on the front page of the Revere Journal, and it turned into a really big thing. So we're very proud of our market rules and making sure that we have an equitable process for all of our vendors to vend at the farmers market. And then the policy development piece is, just a little bit more about how we've become a small business incubator and helping informal businesses to become formal businesses. We had received a lot of calls from residents who want to sell homemade goods at the market, but didn't know how to navigate the food regulation system, especially as immigrants where English is not their first language. So we, as we were working on this, local food truck operators, particularly Latinx Revere residents, also started to approach us. They lived in Revere but could not work here. So the food truck operators, one in particular, would regularly show up to the mayor's event and state that the city doesn't have a food truck policy, so people like him, Latino business owners, don't have a chance to operate in Revere. So I started to look into the city's ordinances and found restrictive limitations and around food trucks, but then also found other discriminatory issues around other ordinances, in particular with our childcare providers. So we went on to work with Tufts University and the UAP program on a report to help develop and really do some research around developing our local food economy. And then the slide that's up now is just the current work that we have been doing around food justice in Revere. The food access and food retail have taken a bit of a pause as we focus a lot on food security. Our extensive relationships allowed us to get emergency food distribution up and running quickly to meet the needs of residents who are not only dealing with food insecurity, but all of the social determinants of health, economic stability, education, access and quality, healthcare, neighborhoods, and built environment, and also our social and community context, again, being a city of immigrants. We know that food brings everybody to the table, and then supporting this entrepreneurial spirit and organizing immigrant families and families of color in Revere is a major key, not just to the revitalization efforts of Revere, but also as a tool against displacement, major displacement of our residents. And by continuing to make Revere a city where we are a food destination and grow our local economy by supporting our local markets, restaurants, and of course, our people. So I'm gonna end my presentation there. Thank you.
Dimple, thank you so much, and thank you for all of your work. Wow. So if there are any questions from the group, I see one from Karen. Karen asks, have you been able to educate other communities about how to do a similar program? And Karen, you might, which program? Sorry, Dimple. Dimple mentioned a lot of programs.
Really, the food insecurity one, really, because it's such a big issue now, and some communities are doing a great job with it, and others I think are still struggling. So I was just wondering if you're able to bring it to other communities across the state.
Yeah, I'm I'm really happy to connect with other communities. Revere on the Move is the program that is a collaboration between my department at City Hall and also the Mass General Brigham Revere Cares Coalition. And we've been part of the Mass in Motion statewide network, and we're considered a legacy city since we've been part of it since prior to the Mass in Motion program, and we've been part of it since 2011. And so there are over 60 cities and towns, and there's definitely ones that are not part of the network, but I'm happy to connect with them. But we meet regularly to share regional ideas and statewide ideas, especially around improving healthy food access to our residents.
That's great. Thanks.
Wonderful. Any other questions for Dimple?
I have a question. Thank you so much for your time. I was wondering if you could speak a little more specifically on how these programs translate onto college campuses, because I think food insecurity on college campuses is like quite an overlooked problem. And like, I know we've been trying to do something about it at our college for quite some time, but it doesn't seem like we're still trying to find out what's effective.
Yeah, you know, I wish I would be able to answer that question. I haven't explored it around college campuses, even though when I was a college student, I faced food insecurity so badly. And I would love to get back to you. I know that within the different food networks that I'm part of, that there has to be a group that's working on food insecurity on campuses. I'd point you to right now the Massachusetts Food Systems Collaborative, and check out their website and see if there are any organizations there that you might be able to network with. The state of Massachusetts also has a state food plan, which is one of a kind, and that's also something that you can find at mass.gov.
All right. Well,
Can I
we're
just-
running over, and I'm just gonna say thank you, Dimple. This was really amazing. We want to thank all our speakers from tonight for taking time to talk to us and share their various experiences, which are all unbelievable. And I want to thank the elected officials who came, who've joined us tonight as well as our sponsors and everyone, the attendees, for showing up and giving so generously. And finally, I want to thank the PAC interns again, because without them, we couldn't do any of this. And we hope to see all of you at part 2 of Protest to Power, Electeds Enacting Policy, which will take place on Wednesday, October 21st, next week from 6 to 7. The speakers will include Massachusetts State Senator Joe Comerford, Suffolk County District Attorney Rachel Rollins, Chelsea City Councilor at Large Damali Vito, and Cambridge School Committee member Aisha Wilson. So thank you again, and good night. We'll see you next week.
See you next week. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Night.